Hello, hello, welcome, welcome. It is a rainy day here in Taipei, Taiwan, and we are chatting about all sorts of things. I wanted to start off today talking about Storm of Swords, which Storm of Swords is usually when I talk to people, most people think Storm of Swords is the best one. It's usually people's either their favorite one or their second favorite one. I would say it's the fan faves, right? Everyone loves Storm. And Storm has the strength of having a very nice pace for most of the book, especially the ending. It kind of builds up into crescendo of excitement. Um, but the we've got great events like the attack at the Fist of the First Men and the Craster's Keep Mutiny and Battle at Castle Black and the Red Wedding and Lysa's death and escaping the Whites with cold hands and Stoneheart's resurrection and Tyrion's trial. It's just excitement after excitement after excitement. However, it is not a flawless book, and it's was written very, very fast. So, Game of Thrones, George R. R. Martin released in '96, but he had thoughts about it in '92 and started writing in earnest around '94, and so there was many years going into that first book. And Clash of Kings, even though it came out only 2 years later, keep in mind about half of a Clash of Kings was already done when A Storm of Swords. When A Game of Thrones was published. So the book that was done almost just crazily fast was A Storm of Swords. George pumping it out in just 2 years, and it's a big book. And I've been thinking a lot about like George when he's rushed and what he produces. And if you've been watching my overanalyzing House of the Dragon, you kind of know that like the Rogue Prince was a very rushed product, and the ending kind of just falls apart. It absolutely falls apart. And so I was thinking about A Storm of Swords because this is a very rushed book, and yet it comes out in many ways very, very good. But then there's also some problems with it. And so I wanted to talk about some of the few things that and this is in somewhat ascending order of seriousness, but not necessarily. This isn't like a pure ranking. I didn't think about like 8/7, but so the first thing, I don't know if it'd be helpful to put, and maybe people can add other things that they think are kind of weird about Storm. So the first thing that I think is a very weird thing is the Brienne's fight with the boat. Okay? So if you guys remember, at the beginning of A Storm of Swords, we're getting introduced to Brienne and Jaime's relationship, and they're riding this boat down the Trident. And at some point, they're being pursued. And Brienne jumps out of her boat, climbs up a mountain, pushes a boulder off of a mountain. It rolls down the mountain and lands on the opposing ship. And then she runs and gets back in her ship with Jaime. And it's beyond cartoonish. I don't know. I can't think of anything else in the whole series that is kind of that cartoonish in its action. And so I kind of think it's a poorly planned, like it's not like that isn't written well or things like that, but come on, like someone jumping out of their boat and climbing up a mountain and pushing a boulder off of a mountain and having that boulder land on a ship is just kind of ridiculous. So let's just say that I can't think of anything else that's just that cartoonish. If anybody else has any ideas or thinks that's somewhat realistic, but it's just insane. All right, so the next thing that I think is a bit weird. Let's see here. And I've written about this. And maybe this one is perhaps fixable if you think there's a kind of theory about it. But if you think there's some scheming on there. But keep in mind this like, you have to believe in like crazy theories and mind control at this point, like I do, in order for all of this to make sense. But the hunger at Craster's Keep is makes no sense in the situation. And now people are getting hungry and complaining that Craster isn't giving them enough food and wanting like hard sausages from the cellar when there's literally a horse being cooked in front of them, and they're like handing out like horse steaks to everybody, and everybody's sitting there going, I wish I had a hard sausage. And then they get into a fight. Now maybe there's mind control going on, but you'd think that like, is every single person in Craster's Keep mind controlled? Like, there's not a single person that's like, dude, shut up. Like, we've got steak right here. You're hungry? Here's a fucking horse steak. So in order for the scene to kind of like work, you need every single person in Craster's Keep to be mind controlled. Now, keep in mind, like, I did a video on this, and it does seem like there's some mind control going on, but like some mind control is like a little different than like every single person completely forgetting that there's a freaking horse like being cooked right there. You know, like, including, we're in Sam's mind. Like, Sam wasn't like, excuse me, guys, have some horse. Like, that's just never fucking, like... So, you know, so that I think is a little sloppy on George's part. The next one, I think this is pretty famous, and most people agree with this, is Dany getting her army. Let's keep in mind that no merchant would be, especially one who deals in like military sales and deals with all sorts of like crazy evil characters, would be so careless as to hand over the rights to an entire army that can then be used to kill them, while simply like grabbing a dragon like on a rope. And I understand that people are like, oh, they were super arrogant and stuff like that. No one's that dumb. Like, just no one's that dumb. Like, imagine you're like a gun merchant, and you know, someone agrees, like some sketchy dudes come into town and want to buy like all of your weapons, and you just like meet them in an alley and you hand over all of your weapons, and they hand over like all like the money. You'd be like, how am I going to protect myself? Like, that's the first thing on your mind. Like, it's now and what's so odd is it's supposed to be seen as like clever, and obviously the plot demands that Dany gets her army, but there's just no way that any human being would be that stupid, like in real life. And I think most people kind of admit that like this is a little forced. Like Dany getting her army, as great as the scene is, and everyone loves the scene and how exciting it is and stuff like that, but logically speaking, like, come on. I've eaten horse. It's fine. I've had plenty of horse. And I've had zebra. So I've actually had Zorse too. Zorse is actually tastier than horse, by the way. But, in my opinion, but I might have had different cuts and stuff like that, so I don't know. Anyway, but how do they taste? They taste more or less like steak, a little gamier than steak, a little tougher, but for the most part, like steak. Like, if we're in the world of like, does it taste like chicken? Does it taste like pork? Does it taste like steak? It tastes like steak. All right. The next thing that's kind of sloppy about the series is the timing of King's dying and Stannis. If you go through the story, and you try to figure out like when Robb is dying and when Balon is dying and when Joffrey is dying and when that news is making it to Stannis and how Stannis is going to get to the wall so fast and all of that information and the deal with Edric Storm. It's impossibly fast. And like George tries to fix this a little in A Dance with Dragons by having Davos remember like incredible winds that push them fast and everything. But really, it's just kind of a failure on a timing sense. Like it really doesn't make sense if you look back at the timeline of everything and how things are going. Like it's just impossible. But again, this one's kind of minor. But let's see. And then another one, let's go with let's do one more, and then I'll deal with some super chats and then come back to my next five. And here we go. The Brave Companion's logic for switching sides and taking Jaime's hand. Keep in mind that this problem is one of the reasons I like started theorizing and started my channel in the first place. I mean, it gets into the Dornish creating the Dornish master plan to try to fix this plot hole. But if you go back and like try to figure out like what were the Brave Companions thinking, and going into Roose Bolton's explanation to Jaime at their dinner, which is a page-long convoluted explanation. It is the worst thing to read. it's so ridiculous. Roose Bolton's like, do you know why, Vargo Hoat took your hand? And Jaime's like, because he's insane. And he's like, no. And he goes on the worst, most convoluted explanation that makes no sense. And when you think of like the Brave Companions, like they were given Harrenhal, and that was their reason for switching sides. Like a bunch of sellswords want to become feudal lords. Like all of them, like the entire company was like, yes, I want to be farmer in the middle of the Riverlands after like betraying, after cutting off like the Lannister's hand, the Lannister's son's hand, but then switching to his side and then somehow like taking power. It is the worst. It makes no sense. Go back if you like and try to make sense of Roose Bolton's words to Jaime and like why the Brave Companions switch sides. It's so bad that this is one of the reasons was just like, no, there had to be some like other crazy reason or something, some grander conspiracy to explain it all, because no one would be this dumb. Like no one would like be like, yes, I'm going to become a feudal lord. Like, and all of these agreements are going to be honored. It's just silly. Okay. So let's get back to weird things that involved with A Storm of Swords. The next one I have on here is Oberyn's logic. I think Oberyn's, and this is another reason like why like the Dornish master plan came around and things like that. And would Oberyn really like, he goes in with this idea that they're going to crown Myrcella with Dornish law, and then he's going to try to kill the Mountain. But like, was this his plan the entire time to kill the Mountain? Because, like they try, like A Feast for Crows tries to put purpose and logic into what Oberyn was doing, but Oberyn just seems very like, as Storm of Swords itself, it's just very rash. And I don't know if A Feast for Crows or Dance with Dragons really pieces it all together. I tried to do it with the Dornish master plan, but by itself, like think about George just writing like, well, Oberyn just got angry and so he decided to defend Tyrion. Well, that's very lucky for our main character that Oberyn like stepped in. Very convenient, but doesn't really make sense. Does it really make sense that Oberyn, this guy who is like a poisoner, who's who's going to sit on the small council, who has all sorts of opportunity to kill people off and poison them at different times. Would he like go on this very dangerous like duel with the Mountain, or did he really feel for Tyrion's cause? Did he really feel bad for that little dwarf baby that Cersei was twisting the penis of and things like that? You know, is it supposed to be read like that? It's there. You know, there's some beautiful dialogue with the Oberyn Tyrion stuff, but overall, like, you know, you really struggle to like make sense of what he was trying to do, especially considering like in retrospect later George is like, no, it was all part of some sort of plan. I haven't told you what the plan is, but it's some sort of plan. So, I mean, Dornish master plan, like my idea tried to make sense of it all, but I don't know. Does George really know what he's doing there? Okay. So next, that my problem with Storm is Rorge and Biter's rise. So keep in mind, Rorge and Biter are some random dudes. And then all of a sudden, out of freaking nowhere, because they're like at the end of a Clash of Kings, they're just like, are you guys brave companions? And they're like, we are now. And they're not just rank and file brave companions. Rorge is a sergeant all of a sudden. Like, out of freaking nowhere. Did he like sign a contract? Did he like sit down with Vargo Hoat? And, you know, this is Rorge and Biter, like practically feral animals. Like these guys are like, even on brave companion like level, like why would you trust these guys? And then the first thing that Rorge does is try to like rape Brienne, which is like their valuable hostage and stuff like that. It's just some over the top, like, why would a sellsword company take on just these random feral animals and then not just take them on as like rank and file, but make Rorge into like a sergeant. And then at the end, like he's leading a group of a faction of the brave companions at the end. Like in what world is this? Like, is this happening? Like, why would anyone do that? Like, and I understand why George did it. He's just trying to like shove in characters and have them fit together and you know, not have splitting plot lines too much. But there's no reason that Rorge and Biter should be rising in the Brave Companions. And then let's see. All right. The next thing about how sloppy Storm is, Olenna's murder scheme. People love the Purple Wedding, but we kind of all know that the Queen of Thorns murder scheme is one of the most illogical things in the world. Like, I'm going to hire Littlefinger to hire a drunk to use a 14-year-old girl to place some poison in her hairnet. Then I can go back and grab the hairnet and poison Joffrey. Like, why didn't you just keep it in your pocket? Like, or like, why do you need or have your own hairnet? Like, there's no reason to involve Dantos and Sansa. There's none. In fact, there's no reason to involve Littlefinger. Like, if you want to freaking kill the king, just bring in the Strangler yourself. Like, bring in one little small crystal and poison his wine. There's no reason to hire Littlefinger, to hire Dantos, to have Sansa, like, bring it in. People are like, well, if they get caught, they have an alibi. No. Oh my God. Like, there's so many things that could go wrong, especially when you have Dantos being a freaking drunk. Like, what if he turns you in? What if Sansa doesn't wear the hairnet? Like, she's a little girl. Like, why would you do that? It's the dumbest. It's the dumbest thing. Now we're getting to the things that really like don't make sense about which again, like, produces this whole video of mine that maybe Olenna didn't do it, because that makes no freaking sense. It makes no freaking sense. And then we've got the last two. Number 2 here. These are some bad ones. Joffrey hired the Catspaw. Come on. like in order for it to even work out, Tyrion misquotes Joffrey. Like Joffrey in a Game of Thrones says a dog to kill a dog, and Tyrion changes it to a dog to kill a wolf. Like he has to even like fake his memories to like shift it around. He's trying to impress his dad by like killing off a like he's trying to impress his dad by being merciful, but Tyrion believes it's Joffrey because only Joffrey could be that cruel, but he's trying to do an act of mercy, not cruelty. It's one of the most convoluted, weird things. And it's one thing, okay, maybe Joffrey didn't hire the Catspaw. That's fine. Maybe Joffrey didn't hire the Catspaw, and somebody else did. However, both Tyrion and Jaime independently come to the conclusion that Joffrey hired the Catspaw. That by itself, like, you know, either they both like irrationally came to this conclusion, or they both irrationally came to a wrong conclusion, the same wrong conclusion. Like either way, it doesn't really work. It doesn't. I mean, I think it's a better story if Joffrey didn't hire the Catspaw, but still, it's really weird that Tyrion and Jaime would come to that conclusion, that ridiculous conclusion. This one, overwhelmingly, I think fans recognize that Joffrey hired the Catspaw as a really stupid plot point. I don't think there's not too much argument on this.